Welcome back to the PCC podcast. And today we've got a Coach's Corner episode. We're going to be talking about a highly in demand topic, reverse dieting. And I'm here with Coach Rachel, and we're going to be chatting all the things reverse dieting today.
Hey guys.
So before we get into the topic, I did want to remind everyone who is listening that this is the month to enter the 100th episode giveaway. So we had episode 100 come out last week. This is 101. And to celebrate, we wanted to give away a $100 gift card to one special person who writes a review and rates this podcast 5 stars on either Apple or Spotify podcasts. If you do the rating and review on both, then you will get 2 entries. So if you're not driving, take 5 seconds to do this. It literally is so easy. And that way we can draw a winner at the end of this month, and someone will win $100 to their favorite place that offers gift cards. So without further ado, let's get into the episode. So we're going to talk reverse dieting, what the heck that is, how it works, when to do it, when not to do it, and just like what to expect, because there's a lot of misconceptions, I think, with reverse dieting gaining a lot of popularity, which has been interesting to see. So I'm excited to break it down with you. So why don't we start with just like, what is a reverse diet? And we'll just kind of riff from there.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to start. So essentially, you are typically going to do a reverse diet if you are coming out of a dieting phase or you have been pretty inconsistent. A lot of times when we have people first coming in, that's where we'll start them. But it's used to help improve biofeedback, energy levels. We're going to slowly be increasing your food based off of biofeedback, energy, what we're seeing on a week-to-week basis, and essentially just helping upregulate our metabolism, because when we are in a deficit for an extended period of time, we are going to start to see some downregulation of our metabolism.
Yeah, I think good news is that we have a lot of episodes leading up to this about metabolic adaptation. So if you don't know what metabolic adaptation is, I would go back to the episode where we interviewed Dr. Eric Trexler, who literally researches metabolic adaptation for a living. But essentially, like, our body's trying to protect us, right? And this is a good thing. This is not, I'm broken or I can't lose fat. Like, this is when, like, I like to think of it as like, either you've been chronically under eating for so long that you're no longer responding to fat loss, or you're stuck at a body weight that's not serving you, because a lot of times we crash diet and then we go back to normal eating and we rebound and we gain more weight, and we crash diet again and then we rebound again. And when we repeat that process over the years, our metabolic rate keeps getting slower and slower and slower, but we keep gaining weight. And so this is where a lot of women kind of end up when they start with us. They might need a reverse diet. And or if you have successfully done a fat loss phase, also needing a reverse diet, because when you successfully lose weight, you will lower calories one way or another. So there's kind of 2 main instances when you would reverse diet, typically either starting out with a coach like me or Rachel, or after a fat loss phase, transitioning from, okay, I lost the weight, now what? I'm going to try to maintain this without having to eat less for the rest of my life, because that's not a lifestyle. But did you happen to brainstorm or think of any ways that, or reasons that people should not reverse diet, or like when they shouldn't?
Oh, goodness. I mean, if we have clients coming in who are already eating enough, properly fueling, feeling like, athletes, a lot of the times, people who come in with the background of, I've been tracking for a long time, I've gone through reverse dieting phases, I know I'm eating enough, we talk up through everything, we look at biofeedback, we see how their body's responding on a week-to-week basis. We can really start people and go straight into a dieting phase if you're already eating enough. You're properly fueling your body. We know your biofeedback's great. You can look and see how your weight is trending on a week-to-week basis. That's one of the biggest first thoughts that comes to mind when we're not going to reverse diet someone. Do you have anything else to add, though? I'm sure.
I do. I have some pet peeves.
Yeah, I'm excited.
So, number one, it is not a weight loss strategy. Like, it is marketed and sold as a weight loss strategy. I kind of made a reel the other day poking some fun at it of like a brand new coach being like, I'm going to do this thing called a reverse diet that supposedly people just eat more and lose weight. And And there is merit to eating more than maybe a crash diet and losing weight. For example, all the people that we coach probably are losing weight within the realm of like 1400 to like 1900 calories, sometimes even more per day,
Mm-hmm.
because that's actually a deficit when you do the math with real evidence-based calculations, versus 800 calorie diets, 1200 calorie diets, that sort of thing. But just reverse dieting in and of itself is not a weight loss strategy. Some people lose weight in the process of a reverse diet for reasons that we'll explain later. But just for that intention, that is the wrong time. Another time that's the wrong time, that's a huge pet peeve of mine, is when coaches come to me and they have a client who's pretty obviously metabolically inflexible and very overweight, like overweight or obese, let's say over 30% body fat, 50 plus pounds of weight to lose, sometimes far beyond that. And the coach is coming to me saying this person has been under eating and they need a reverse diet. The problem is that when you increase calories for somebody who has, let's say, insulin resistance, metabolic inflexibility, it doesn't work the same way. It typically will just pack on extra weight. And the problem is that typically, like, and I don't want to generalize for every single type of person under this umbrella, because there are medical conditions, autoimmune conditions, inflammatory conditions that make it different, where people can be being honest and have this hurdle to overcome, which, grateful to have Rachel here who like has studied this kind of thing to help people overcome those more complex issues. But a lot of people are just not being honest with their coach, and they're overeating and undereating and kind of just irregularly eating. And their coach thinks they need a reverse diet because they're going based on the data that's been reported, but not everything that's actually being eaten. And so this person's now eating more and gaining weight when they're already 250 pounds and not active, don't have any good habits. And that's definitely the wrong time to reverse diet.
Yeah, I think you nailed that one on the head. I mean, yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's not the end all be all quick fix answer to every single problem we have. We have to really go case by case and look a little bit deeper for some people. Like you said, if someone is coming in, oftentimes the data we're being given might not actually be what's accurate. So, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, definitely sometimes to and sometimes not to. But for you, if you are listening to this episode and you have finished a fat loss phase, or you are, truly chronically under eating, not eating low calories throughout the week and then not tracking on the weekends, like actually eating really chronically low calories for a long period of time, and your body's not responding, this would be a good time to reverse diet. So, what would you say, like, when you know that it's the right time, let's say that's the prerequisite that's met, like what are the first steps that you take people through in a reverse diet?
Okay, so when we're about to start a reverse diet or we want to start a reverse diet with someone, I mean, half of it just comes down to education, because I've noticed personally when, especially if I'm getting on a call with a new client, there's a ton of fear around, hey, I'm going to be eating a little bit more. So a lot of it comes down to some education, hey, here's some examples I have from previous clients. So just letting people know that this is just part of the journey. Just put some trust into me here, put some trust into our program and the science behind all of this, because at the end of the day, it is a little scary if you have been chronically under eating or in a yo-yo for years on end to think of consistently eating more. Because like we said, oftentimes we're not being consistent anyways. So coming in and eating more in general, then also having to be consistent across the board or aim to be more consistent across the board presents as a challenge. So, like I said, education is really the first step here, in my opinion. But then, very slowly, we're not going to go in a reverse phase and say, okay, you've come in eating 1,200 calories. Let's jump right up to 2,000. Nope. Super slow. We want to, like I said before, check biofeedback on a week-to-week basis. Ensure that your body is really responding well. A lot of this comes down to communication, making sure in your check-in, how's your weight responding? That's when we do weight, photos, measurements. We check on sleep, stress, all of these different things we take into account when we are changing macros or changing different goals we may have set for you nutritionally on a week-to-week basis. But biggest thing here is just Slow process. We
Yeah.
are not rushing a reverse diet because ultimately, if you rush through a reverse diet, that's when you can put on that unwanted fat. And if you do a reverse diet properly, we're probably going to put on a ton of muscle in the process, or you have the opportunity to put on muscle in the process and ensure that we aren't putting on a bunch of unwanted fat. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah.
I love that you mentioned fear, the fear of eating more, the psychological side of it, because if you think about like, especially, I mean, the people that we're working with typically grew up in the 2000s, like maybe late 90s, like millennials who just grew up on low calorie Weight Watchers. You know, MyFitnessPal became a big thing for like, you know, our generation in high school. It was track your calories. And I think it really kind of bred this mentality of like less is better. And like if you eat more, you're going to gain weight, and this generalized like fear of food. And so I love what you said about like it's a slow approach, not just for the reason of like physiologically we're preventing like a really quick rebound from, you know, your metabolism not catching up, but also like it's also mentally tolerable that way of like, okay, we increased by, you know, let's say you were eating 1,200 calories a day and we increased to like 1,350 or 1,400. Like that's mentally tolerable for the person too, to kind of like I like to think of it as like dipping your toe in the water and like realizing like no alligator is going to come and bite you, right? It's like you're dipping your toe in the water and it's like, okay, I'm safe. My weight didn't freak out. My weight didn't do anything. Now that's not always the case. Sometimes the scale does fluctuate,
Mm-hmm.
and I've found that this is what makes reverse dieting hard, is like if we don't have that prerequisite foundation of like understanding the scale as data, not emotionally reacting to it, because maybe the first day you eat the higher calorie amount, you accidentally planned wrong and you ate your normal meals and then had to shove 600 extra calories down at night, and then you woke up bloated and the scale was up because of that. But we automatically attribute it to, oh my God, this thing isn't working. I knew it. This is the wrong way. I need to eat less.
Yep.
Right. So I think definitely having a coach and just overall like having that holistic approach and foundation setting is a great way to prevent a lot of that. But um, I think I got a little bit off track, but the fear plays a really big role. And like what we want to do is create some safety around, okay, we're going to make tolerable both mentally and physically changes. And then we're going to every step of the way, like reflect in the check in and help the person understand like what's happening and why there's no, you know, big red flags or warning signs with like little fluctuations like that.
Yep, absolutely. And yeah, I mean, I think you nailed that one too. But yeah, it's all mental. It's very mentally challenging. I mean, I've the few reverse diets I've gone through with a coach, because even
Yeah.
coaches need coaches through a reverse diet, because it can just be it's a mental challenge. It truly is, because you
Yeah.
experience. We'll dive into all the other things, but hunger cues are going to likely increase, and there's just a lot that's going on in a reverse diet. So having someone have that bird's eye view, able to give you the objective view versus tying your emotion to everything, is extremely helpful.
Yeah, totally. Well, I mean, we can kind of go into that as well, like because you said it's a psychological challenge, but it also presents like physiological challenges and changes because like your metabolism is actually upregulating because there are many different mechanisms that get suppressed when you are restricting calories for an extended period of time. And it's suppressing things that essentially like take energy to do, right? So if you've ever, this is a very extreme example, but if you've ever lost your cycle because of undereating, your body's shutting that down because it takes a lot of energy to shed your uterine lining
Yes.
and like things like that. So, when we are increasing our food intake, even just like a little bit, right? 1,200 calories to 1,400 calories, for example, the likelihood that this is still a very large calorie deficit for someone is very high, but
Yep.
it's still more energy. And then the body interprets that as like, ooh, we're getting more energy. You know, let's upregulate these hunger hormones. Let's upregulate our energy or our drive to move, or let's, you know, get better quality sleep and like utilize these resources better. And what ends up happening is like the person ends up burning more calories, sometimes disproportionately to the calories that were increased like nutritionally,
Yeah.
that's where you see those circumstances where people market online. I increased this person's calories by 800 and they lost 15 pounds, is because their lifestyle, their body, their physiology was so suppressed for so long that like they just get to live a normal life now and eat an appropriate amount of food, and it's still a deficit.
Yeah, exactly. Isn't it crazy? I mean, it's insane how the results you can see from a reverse sometimes. And of course, we know that's not always the case, but
Yeah.
how much our biofeedback can change. I can say personal experience when I went through my first bodybuilding prep. I lost my cycle for
Mhm.
it was 9 or 10 months, one of the two. I can't quite remember. And once I started the reverse dieting phase, oh my goodness, it was insane. I mean, my hunger, my energy, everything you just listed, so much better. Did it take me a little bit to get my cycle back? Absolutely. But I felt like a completely different person from simply increasing food and staying there. So this fear mongering and this fear we've created around food, it's really so important to work on the mental aspect as well as obviously increasing food, working on your body metabolism, all the things. But if you can really get deeper with psychology here, it's life changing.
Yeah. Well, I think I remember on the last episode that we did with Alejandro, we were talking about how people don't realize like what they've adapted to as their normal. And I think back to like my last bodybuilding prep too. After the show, after I reversed my calories back up, like I kept having these aha moments. Like every month or so, I'd be like, wow, like this is what a good workout feels like, or like this is what energy feels like. And it kept happening. Like every time we kept increasing food, I was like, oh, I thought that I had it good, but now like I feel really good. And when I was in the prep, like there were plenty of times where I knew I was tired and miserable and whatnot, but like
Push through.
there was a certain level of like you had adapted to it, of like this is just what life is, and that's like it's what our brain does, is it normalizes whatever we're currently experiencing to help us suffer less.
Yep.
But a lot of people who maybe chronically undereat during the week and then overeat on the weekend, and they just stay in that yo-yo, like they're living like sub capacity like
Mhm.
all the time,
Yeah.
of just like operating at like maybe 20% of the energy, the capacity, the mental bandwidth, the amount of brain fog, like all these things that could be alleviated if they did actually fuel their body instead of just
Yeah.
view food as an enemy.
It's truly so crazy. I mean, that come in. I mean, there's so many times people don't even realize what feeling good actually feels like
Yeah.
until you're eating enough. And then it's like you said, it's those aha moments of holy crap, this is what this could be like. I thought I was sleeping enough. I thought I was eating enough. I thought I had energy because that's just what your body has adapted to. But
Yeah.
ultimately at the end of the day, you get just even a piece of that and you're like, "Oh, I need more."
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. And I think kind of just bridging us back into like the process of reverse dieting. So we went over like the initial change we increase calories. Usually like for me, the first increase is a little bit larger than the others. So like I might take someone from 1200 calories to 1400 or 1450, but then after that, we might be doing 100 calorie increases, 50 calorie increases, things like that are smaller.
Yep.
But a lot of times clients get scared as those numbers start climbing. So just like one global reminder that I always like to just like harp on is remember that every step up in a reverse diet until you've actually reached maintenance is still a calorie deficit.
Yep.
And like you're just making the deficit smaller and smaller and smaller, and if you adhere to that, like you're going to be in a deficit the whole time. You're just going to lose weight less quickly for the most part. And so and then again, the offsetting of like how the metabolism upregulates, like sometimes you keep losing weight for a little bit while you're reverse dieting, but for most people it's like once we get up to a certain point, then things stabilize and then you're actually at maintenance. And I just kind of repeat that line to everyone all the time because for some reason it kind of just sits with people like, okay, it's still a deficit,
It
like I
feels
can do
a
this.
hundred percent. It gives that feeling of safety because I think at the end of the day, if you're so used to being in a deficit for a majority of your life, that
Yeah.
if that's what your body has known for so long, it's kind of your home base. So knowing that you're still doing that on the way out is really nice. But I think something that we touched on a little bit last week too in that podcast with Alejandra was how sometimes even when we do notice that scale pop up a little bit, let's say 2 to 4 or 5 pounds, whatever. We don't even need to put a number on it per se, but when you do see that scale slightly move up as we start to increase food for some people, you have to remember that's not you putting on fat right off the bat. It's because oftentimes when we do go and increase food out of a reverse diet, we're primarily messing with your carbs and your fat intake if we have specific macros set. Typically, we're not messing with your protein, adjusting your protein as often. So when we're adding in more carbs, more fat, then typically you're going to see your glycogen stores go up. And I try to think about it like this. If you're in a diet and we're a sponge, when you're in a diet, you start to squeeze that sponge out a little bit, but then as you add that the glycogen stores back in, you increase the carb intake a little bit, you're filling that sponge back up. So inherently, it's water weight. It's your glycogen stores filling back up. It's you eating more carbs. It's you eating more food. It's water weight, though. It's not a bunch of fat. Ultimately, will at some point we put on maybe a little bit more fat? Sure. But that is not what the initial little increase that many people do experience is. So I think that's really important to note too, that if you're noticing that scale slightly spike, you didn't put on 5 pounds of fat overnight. I can promise you that.
Totally. Yeah, I think we should definitely do an episode on like the scale as a whole
Agreed.
because I was gonna start diving into that and I was like, nope, hold back. That's a whole episode.
Yeah, that's so true.
So maybe we'll do that soon. But I always like to set the expectation. This helped another client out like recently. Set the expectation of like whatever your lowest weight in the diet was, like you're probably not going to maintain like that exact lowest weight. So if we just set the expectation of like, can we just stay within 5 pounds of that? Then like the alarm bells just stopped going off. Like I'm thinking of one person in particular. She was like, the alarm bells stopped going off every time I stepped on the scale because it was within the 5 pound range. So I could let you manage my weight the way you need to manage it without me spiraling or trying to control the process too much because the expectation was just set there. Because like if I diet from like, let's say, and I will also say the more weight you lose, the larger that fluctuation range is. Not to say that we want to be okay with putting on weight, but like Rachel said, for every 1 gram of carbohydrates that you eat, it brings in 3 grams of water into the cell with it in the muscle cell. It's not bloating, it's not water retention, it's not puffiness. Like that's not what you're feeling. It's literally making your muscles perform better in the gym. There's that. There's the physical weight of food in your body. Like you're eating more food, so like it weighs something. It's in your body. That's going to weigh something. You're going to pass some bigger stools, sure, but like it's still going to be in your body. And when you've lost larger amounts of weight, like that fluctuation is a little bit greater. So if I have a client, who's lost 120 pounds, we have a kind of a mental framework of like, this was your lowest weight. We want to stay within like 15 pounds of that. And like, she didn't love that. She would have loved to stay at that exact lowest weight. But she knows if she's passing 10 pounds, like, and it's starting to get closer to 15, that's when it starts to really like check my, my nutrition, really dial back in and make sure I'm pulling back on certain things. But like keeping a range, right? And so if you've lost, 15 pounds, 20 pounds, 30 pounds, then maybe it's that 5 pound range that you just keep an eye on, right? And then the alarm bells go off when you exceed that. So you're not spiraling every single day because you like ate sushi last night.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good one that I'm going to steal from you. I think that's like truly, that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not often we have like super big amounts of weight loss, but I have noticed, on my other podcast that it's on pause right now, the Barbell Lifestyle, but we did an interview with, oh gosh, what's his name? He's the founder of Macros Inc. And I can't remember his name, but it was a really great interview because we talked about like people who lose large amounts of weight, and the differences between that and like our, 50 and below pounds of weight loss. And specifically how much water someone can retain because they just have more skin, and the skin is an organ that holds water.
Right.
Like the fluctuations can be so much greater, like 8 pounds, 10 pounds overnight, just because of that.
Yeah.
And so I guess just, keeping that in mind, if you're listening to this, maybe you've lost like 50, 60 pounds, like that's applicable to you to a smaller degree, but more so than someone who's just lost 10 pounds.
100%. Yeah, I think that's a really great piece of information to have. Yeah, that's crazy. But what about, do you want to dive into the mindset a little more? Or do we want to talk about like some of the biofeedback stuff?
Um, I think we hit on mindset a lot. What do you think about like, how do you know when to keep increasing versus when you're at maintenance? Like, I think that's a good, important, like kind of pinpoint for people to have of like, when do I know that I'm done,
Yeah. Kind of like when to call the reverse diet at some point, right? I think it's kind of looking overall. Again, a lot of this is going to come back to checking your biofeedback, looking at the markers on a week-to-week basis and see how your body is responding, and seeing if we are losing. If we're calling the reverse. Excuse me. Are we calling the reverse, or if we're at maintenance? I'm sorry. You said when we're at maintenance. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, when do we know?
Yeah. So ultimately, if we're at a place where we're starting to notice, hey, we are trending up in weight, we are noticing some of our biofeedback is changing a little bit, when maybe we are starting to even feel a little bit more sluggish at times, or the biggest thing for me is the weight, looking at that on a week-to-week basis, looking at measurements, looking at photos. That's where I tend to really lean into when it comes to the surplus, and overall just seeing how the client is feeling energy-wise, because ultimately that is going to be one of our biggest determinants as to how we proceed moving forward, because most people that are coming to us aren't in a lifestyle cut or looking to lose some weight, aren't looking to go into a bulking phase per se. We'll stay at that maintenance range. So really just trying to monitor the different biofeedbacks and how we, like I said, weight measurements and photos.
Yeah. I was kind of thinking, so what's funny is that the way that I prepared for this podcast was that I recorded the PSB client module for reverse dieting this morning. So I kind of like already said a lot of this stuff out loud, but I'm actually kind of thinking now, something that's different, that's not in that module, that's important, is like the practicality of how granular we get in a reverse diet with clients. So like, for example, the degree to which you and I have reverse dieted in bodybuilding, of like, add 5 grams of carbs this week, add 5 grams of fat this week. Like, that doesn't happen for like the people that we work with, because they're probably maybe just tracking protein and calories, or they are tracking all their macros, but it's like, very, maybe a little less consistent than how we would be like dialed in. And so like typically it's like increase by 50 to 100 calories, keep protein the same, or add 5 grams of protein, right? Are basically the increases that we're making. And I think where I was kind of going with that was like, when it comes to knowing when to call it, like when you're going at that granular of a level where like, to the gram, like where you're at for maintenance, like you can kind of like really tell, like you have every weigh in, you have every gram of food logged. You can know almost exactly when you start to hit that threshold. Whereas for a lot of our clients, what I've noticed is like one of two things will happen. If like the person's like very adherent overall, like they're one of the people that like hits 90 to 100% of their calories and protein, they just make it work no matter what. Like what I'll do with those people is I'll kind of almost let them just barely enter a surplus. And when I start to see like 2, 3, 4 weeks of like, we've gained like a quarter of a pound each week and like it's still going up, I'm like, okay, we're there. Let's pull back a step. And then now we know we're in maintenance, because we know we've like breached the territory of a surplus. So we know where that threshold is. Versus if I am like, for a lot of people, like if we're just not that accurate, not that consistent, because that's like most people that we work with, typically it's like once they're at a good spot with like relationship with food noise, being able to go out to eat and like not have to order grilled chicken breast with no oil or butter
Right. Feel
as their entree. Like if they can like fit in a burger here and there, or they can fit in, things that are more calorically dense and not sacrifice their whole day for it. So like quality of life is there, flexibility is there, not having to focus or stress about food is there, and it's just generally enough.
Yep.
Like then we can kind like we don't have to necessarily know like have we gotten to the top end of maintenance, the middle of maintenance, like because it's kind of a range. Like you can kind of just like hang out there, and it's a little more vague, but like that's the thing about coaching is like not everything is a formula. Like some of it is just like communicating with the client.
Yep.
But that's where like most people end up at the end of a reverse is like we kind of know we're like in that range, or maybe the calories that we're trying to hit on a day-to-day basis are a little bit lower than we'd like, but we know that we overeat on the weekends by a small margin.
Yep.
So we know that those things balance each other out. And if that's like the balance that they want long term, of like during the week, I just eat my meals, and then on the weekend, I have a couple extra drinks, and like that's what keeps me in this weight range, then that's what maintenance looks like. And so I think another episode we could do is like defining maintenance of how does someone maintain their weight long term and the different ways that it can look and that we can go about it. But like
Yeah. That would be
just to kind of know when you're done, sometimes you don't have an exact numerical answer, and that's okay.
Yep, exactly. Because, yeah, that's how I was like, I could answer this a couple of different ways. But yeah, a lot of it is, I mean, truly, how's the food noise? How are we feeling? Are we able to go out to eat and enjoy a meal and not feel stressed about it? And yeah, how's your relationship with food? And just feeling more confident overall really does make the biggest difference. And if we find clients are there, I mean, you're going to know in a heartbeat because they're going to communicate that with you. And yeah, so very good point.
Totally. Yeah. So I think that's pretty much, when to start, when to do it, when to not do it, what kind of increases to make, what does it look like to finish a reverse diet? And then from there, I mean, I think if we go any further with anything else, we're making whole new episodes on different topics. So is there anything that you feel like we missed that you had on your notes?
I mean, not necessarily. I think the biggest thing here though is not having these set expectations when you're going into a reverse diet.
Yeah.
Remember, genetics, diet history, activity levels, stress, all of these things play such a big role in how your body's going to respond. So give yourself some grace. Don't have these, I have to lose this amount of weight. I have to do this. I have to do this. Just show up, trust your coach, give your best effort, and we're going to make sure you're moving in the right direction.
Absolutely. Yeah. Expectations play a huge role. I think there's some rabbit holes I could go down there, but I'll save it for another time. So
throughout this episode.
yeah. But thank you guys so much for listening. Hopefully you pulled something from this episode on reverse dieting and how it could be beneficial for you, or maybe it just helped you break through some fears around reverse dieting that you had if you're listening to this because we assigned it to you in the phase that you're going into for your journey with us. So just a reminder, if you have not already and you're not driving, make sure to enter the PCC podcast 100th episode giveaway. Again, Apple, Spotify, all you need to do is give us a 5-star rating and review, and you can do it on both platforms, and that will count as 2 entries. And at the end of the month, we will draw a winner for a $100 gift card of your choice. So thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll see you back here next week.